You grew up watching their faces on posters and in black and white close-ups, flawless skin, perfect hair, movie magic. But behind the lights and silk gowns, a stinkier truth sometimes waited between takes. Today we'll walk behind the curtain and meet 9 Golden Age legends whose off-camera hygiene became industry legend, tales of dentures, fetid trailers, and dressing rooms that crews treated like hazardous zones. Some of these stories sting. Some are almost unbelievable. Stay with me. By the end, you'll never view certain classic kisses the same way. Hollywood sold glamour. The studios manufactured fantasy. But even the most luminous stars were human, and humans have habits. Some charming, others not so much. These aren't one-off anecdotes. These are recurring stories from makeup artists, grips, wardrobe supervisors, directors, and co-stars. I'll call them what the studios whispered behind closed doors, the actors who made mouths water. With nausea, we'll meet 9 icons one by one, and I'll keep the receipts light on sensationalism while preserving the grainy, often brutal eyewitness details that made these tales hard to forget. That if this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Number 1. Clark Gable. The irresistible star with a problematic smile, Clark Gable was Hollywood royalty, affable, rakish, and magnetic on camera. But several long-running accounts paint a different picture up close. By his early 30s, Gable had dental trouble severe enough that he wore full dentures, and production stories say those prosthetics were poorly fitted and infrequently cleaned. The result, according to multiple crew recollections, was breath so foul that people prepared with mints and mouthwash before kissing scenes. Vivien Leigh, who famously shared a screen kiss with Gable, reportedly relied on smelling salts between takes to steady herself. Loretta Young is said to have physically vomited after a kissing scene on one production. A few set hands, always anonymous in memoir snippets, describe an MGM breath kit stocked with strong mouthwash mints, and in extreme situations, nose clips. Whether every retelling is perfectly accurate is impossible to verify decades later. What stands out is a pattern. Gable's dental problems and the practical fishbowl solutions the studio tried to make production workable. That contrast cinematic romance and off-camera mitigation is the jolt that keeps this story memorable. Hook, if you think romantic close-ups are all sparks and roses, think again. Sometimes they were also a production hazard. Number 2, Marlon Brando. Genius of the craft, notorious for filth, Marlon Brando changed acting in America. He also created one of the most persistent hygiene reputations in film lore. Accounts from coworkers describe periods when Brando would appear on set unbathed after days away, wearing clothing the crew said had accumulated an odor so distinct it was hard to ignore. On some films, anecdotes claim he deliberately ate pungent foods, blue cheese is often named, and refused to clean his mouth before intimate scenes, sometimes as a rebellious, performative act. On productions like Apocalypse Now and earlier pictures, stories circulate of trailers so saturated with odor that crews describe them as requiring exceptional cleaning or even furniture removal. Director Francis Ford Coppola and other filmmakers have spoken privately about the difficulties of working with a man whose intensity on screen was matched by off-screen eccentricity. Many who worked with Brando say his talent made these hardships tolerable. Some argue those choices were part of his larger rebellion against a polished studio system. Again, the line between provocation, personal eccentricity, and neglect blurs. But the repeated testimonies make the reputation hard to dismiss. Hook. Brando could give one of the most intimate performances in film and leave a set crew plotting fireproofing. Number 3. Steve McQueen. Grease, gasoline, and the smell of danger. Steve McQueen cultivated cool like armor, motorcycles, fast cars, a lean, private charisma. But the parts of his life he polished, cars and bikes, sometimes received more attention than he gave his own grooming. Multiple crew recollections describe McQueen showing up smelling of engine grease, fuel, and oil, having worked on vehicles between scenes and skip showers. The pit stop special, as production workers nicknamed it, involved wiping with paper towels and spritzes of cologne. Enough to make him camera-ready, perhaps, but not to erase the grime. This smell wasn't just unpleasant, it was persistent. Co-stars reported limiting takes for the sake of shared scenes, and directors scheduled shots to minimize close contact wherever feasible. McQueen's devotion to machines makes the anecdote especially ironic, meticulous about his vehicles, casually neglectful about the one thing that mattered for intimate scenes, basic cleaning. The result was filmic legend. He made cool look effortless and hygiene look optional. Hook. The next time you watch a smoky, leather-clad McQueen close-up, imagine the oil-scented cloud that followed him off camera. Number 4. Tallulah Bankhead. Flamboyant, fearless, and famously unwashed Tallulah Bankhead loved provocation. She was theatrical, improvised lines, and took pleasure in scandal. But on top of a personality that delighted in shocking audiences was a habit that shocked production staff. She rarely bathed. Theater managers and stagehands described dressing rooms that reeked and required special cleaning after runs. Bankhead herself was unapologetic. She treated her relationship with dirt as part of her persona. Reports, often sensational in memoirs, claim she sometimes went underwear-free and kept a living space that appalled hotel staff and domestic workers. Directors who cast Bankhead weighed the magnetism she brought to the screen against the practical complications of shooting in close quarters. Alfred Hitchcock supposedly quipped about the difficulty of deciding whether her offbeat hygiene issues were the Department of Costumes, makeup, or something darker. Bankhead turned transgression into brand. For crews, it became a workplace problem. For audiences, it contributed to the myth of an actress who refused to be tamed. Hook. Bankhead's star power was undeniable, and her disdain for bathing became part of the legend that kept people talking. Number 5. W.C. Fields, comedian, connoisseur of drink and lingering odor. W.C. Fields played drunks with incandescent comic timing, and some stories insist his on-screen persona leaked into real life. Fields's fondness for alcohol is well documented, and several anecdotes from travelers, hotel staff, and crew suggest his clothes and breath often carried the evidence. Wardrobe people joked, not entirely lightly, about reeking suits that needed extraordinary airing out after use. This isn't to reduce comic artistry to caricature. Fields's timing and inventive performances mattered, but when a performer's working condition becomes one where lamps and film stock are gingerly managed around lingering fumes, anecdote becomes legend. Producers learned, sometimes begrudgingly, to shape schedules and routines around what Fields brought to set, a surprising production cost that had nothing to do with lighting or grip. Hook. Funny thing about comedy. Sometimes the misery off camera is what makes the laugh land on screen. Number 6. Bette Davis. Cigarettes as identity and an occupational hazard. Bette Davis defined fierce intensity on screen and a fierce relationship with cigarettes off it. Reports from wardrobe and makeup crews often mention her heavy smoking as a near constant. Anecdotes tell of dressing rooms cloaked in smoke, garments requiring special care, and makeup artists enduring a nicotine haze while applying complex looks. A few coworkers joked, half in earnest, that Davis's presence could be detected by the yellowing halo she left on a wardrobe door. Davis embraced an image, and she embraced nicotine. For many colleagues, that meant working in a persistent fog. Some younger actors were left coughing, others learned to schedule around her. Yet, Davis's career thrived because of her force as a performer, even if her habit made every set a little more complicated. Hook. When great acting collides with 100 cigarettes a day, the result is unforgettable performances and a very smoky workplace. Number 7. Howard Hughes. Germaphobe turned cautionary example. Howard Hughes's arc is perhaps the most tragic of the lot. A brilliant aviator, producer, and entrepreneur, Hughes later descended into obsessive behaviors. His was a collapse that combined extreme germophobia with an aversion to ordinary personal care. By the end of his life, he maintained rituals that baffled and terrified employees. Careful avoidance of contact paired with increasingly bizarre sanitation habits that paradoxically made his living spaces unlivable by normal standards. Employees who worked for him toward the end of his life described sealed rooms, tissue use that left piles of refuse, and a filth that seemed to accumulate because the fear of contamination prevented standard cleaning. The result was a man isolated in his own rituals and in a state that required extraordinary handling after his death. Hughes's story raises sympathy and horror in equal measure, a reminder that mental health, when paired with extreme wealth and isolation, can lead to appalling conditions. Hook. Hughes's life reads like a cautionary tale, a genius undone by fear of the very thing that could have helped him. Number 8, Ava Gardner. Beauty, perfume, and a notorious indifference to scrubbing. Ava Gardner was, by most accounts, mesmerizing. Directors and co-stars often described her as irresistible. Behind that glamour, however, some set accounts say Gardner treated personal grooming with casual indifference. Makeup artists reportedly developed systems of mints, mouthwash breaks, and camera angles to keep close-ups flattering and co-stars. Literally upwind. Gardner's approach, according to remembered stories, was to mask rather than to clean, cover body odor with fine perfume, and rely on makeup and hair to create an illusion of pristine beauty. For crews used to more predictable routines, her habits could be a logistical headache, but her magnetic screen presence usually outweighed discomfort. In an era when star image was everything, the discrepancy between on-screen perfection and backstage reality fueled more than a few whispered anecdotes. Hook. When a goddess in public smells ordinary in private, the contradictions become some of Hollywood's most enduring myths. Number 9, Charles Laughton. Transformative actor. Clothes that had to be quarantined. Charles Laughton was a chameleon on screen, from Quasimodo's deformity to Captain Bligh's tyranny. Yet some wardrobe and production folks remembered his clothes as requiring special treatment, not because of historical accuracy, but because of odor. Laughton threw himself into roles in ways that could leave costumes